Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to our first fall, I guess, ITMDC meeting. It's a miserable day here in New Jersey. It looks like, it doesn't look like it's the beginning of fall. It looks like we are in the midst of fall. We have a very relevant and timely agenda for this afternoon's meeting, focused on ethylene oxide and titanium dioxide. Again, these are very top of mind issues for all of us in the industry today. And we have excellent speakers and experts who will be able to address both these topics. And Jim, can I hand it over to you now to welcome our experts?
Yes, you can. And I see the trio, their pictures have appeared on the screen. So thank you, Rashida, for making that appear. And I do have some very nice short bios for each of these presenters today. And as way of a background, I know RNI. I've been very active with Sebastian and back in the days of Amy Mazingo dealing with RNI. I often recommend RNI to many of our members who are looking for regulatory support, especially outside the US, but they are definitely have the expertise, I think, for today's presentation on that we're calling Euro News, latest restrictions and new opportunities for food supplements. And we will be hearing, and I'm not sure the order, so I'm just going to give you the bios in the order I got them, which is Leah Trishalat is part of the regulatory team at RNI Consulting. Her role at RNI is to provide advice to food companies about nutrition and health products regarding product formulation, labeling, and claims in France and abroad. She also works on obtaining market authorization for food products and novel food products. Kival Bula is a medical affairs consultant and the UK business lead based in RNI Consulting's London office. He has experience working on the clinical assessment of health products with a strong focus on product strategy. And finally, Anne-Claire Thibault is the manager of RNI's regulatory and scientific teams. She has expertise in European and international food, cosmetic, and borderline products laws. She offers regulatory guidance and support to RNA Consulting clients through feasibility studies, consulting missions, trainings, due diligence, and regulatory support on several themes, including novel foods, food supplements, and borderline products. And so without further ado, we're going to go ahead and let the trio of RNI experts start their presentation. So thanks so much. Merci.
Thank you for this introduction. I will share my screen now. I hope it will work.
Perfect. It's working.
Good.
Great. So I'll kick us off. So firstly, thanks, Jim, for that introduction. It was very clear. We're very excited to be talking to you all today. So as Jim said, so I'm Kival. I'm one of the consultants at RNI Consulting based in the United Kingdom, and joining me on the call is also Leah and Anne-Claire, who are based in our France office. And the three of us will be going over the topics. So the aim of the short presentation is to give you some updates and news from Europe with a focus on new ingredient restrictions and opportunities for food supplements, and focusing on the specific two that you'd mentioned before. So before jumping ahead, I just wanted to give you a very quick introduction to RNI Consulting. So we are a regulatory, scientific, and clinical affairs consulting firm. We've been around for just over 15 years now and have a team of about 14 consultants split between 3 offices in France, the United Kingdom, and the United States. Our core business is on food and nutrition products, but we also work with many other consumer health industries as well, like medical devices and cosmetics. So let me hand it over to our French team to begin with the topics.
So we divided up this topic into 3 sections. We will give information about the regulatory context for food supplements in the EU, then the last restriction and opportunity for ingredients, product formulation, and then we will finish this presentation about the last updates on product quality, safety, and efficacy in the European market and the UK. So without further ado, let's get started on food supplements in the European markets. So the Directive 2002/46 EC, which I will refer throughout this presentation as the Food Supplement Directive, offers an harmonized definition of food supplements and contains harmonized rules on labeling, especially regarding label warnings. However, the harmonized provision on the composition of food supplements is rather limited since it only lists authorized vitamins and minerals and their forms. So the composition and marketing authorization of these products is therefore largely subject to national legislation. There are positive and negative lists of permitted or prohibited botanical and other substances, ingredients, which differ among member states. National list also of maximum daily levels for nutrients, and also depending of which country your product is marketed, your product label may have to show an additional warning if your product contains certain ingredients. So it's really important for companies that want to expand their business in the EU to be informed on the member state requirements applying to their products. So food supplements are defined as foodstuffs, and meaning that in the EU, food supplements are regulated as foods. And their purpose is to supplement the normal diet, indicating that they are intended for the healthy population. So a wide range of nutrients and other ingredients might be present in food supplements that are defined as concentrate sources of nutrients or other substances with a nutritional or physiological effect alone or in combination. This includes, but not limited to, vitamins and minerals, amino acids, fiber, and plants. And finally, they must be marketed in those forms designed to be taken in measure small unit quantities, such as capsule, tablets, and pills. So to facilitate the monitoring of food supplements, the Food Supplement Directive provides that member states may require that the product be notified prior marketing. So not all member states require to do so. As you can see, it's not necessary in the Netherlands, whereas it is in France. And you can also see that the notification prices differs. It is free in France, whereas not in Belgium. So also worth notice is what we call the mutual recognition procedure, which is a procedure that is possible in some cases. It's a marketing authorization is granted in one member state, and that can be recognized in other EU countries. So next, we will focus on the opportunity and challenges that companies face when using certain ingredients in their products. So in terms of nutrients, as I mentioned, the nutrition forms that are authorized in food supplements are listed in the Food Supplements Directive. So the Food Supplements Directive keeps on getting amended. In 2021, there has been the addition of 2 chemical forms of minerals. They are listed on the slides, nicotinamide riboside chlorides and magnesium citrate malates that has been authorized in food supplements. Also, as I mentioned, in terms of maximal level, there are no harmonization, but it's worth noting that the EU Commission has given EFSA, which is the European Food Safety Authority, an official mandate to reassess the tolerable upper intake levels, the UL, for vitamins and minerals. So we noticed that these upper limits tend to increase in several member states compared to previous limits. Also, there are new maximum limits for children that are different from food supplements for the general population. In terms of botanical and substances, so there is no exhaustive list of plants and substances in the EU. It's really a case-by-case assessment by member states based on national law. And in the case, there are novel food regulation and national regulation. So no ingredients that is considered novel, meaning that has been consumed significantly before the 15 May 1997 in the EU can can be put on the European markets without being authorized under the novel food regulation. Therefore, the novel food catalog and the union list, which compiled all the authorized novel foods in the European Union, served as orientation on whether a product will need an authorization under the novel food regulation. Worth notice is that member states tend to take a positive step towards harmonization, and we can talk about the Belfrit lists, which list around 1,000 botanicals, which Belgium, France, and Italy consider as safe for use in food supplements. So as I mentioned, the mutual recognition procedure can be used for botanical and substances. And also it's really important that as food supplements are regulated as foods, they should not fall under the drug status and so drug regulation. And so that's why there are national lists of medicine plants in Europe that can help you decide whether or not your plants should be considered as drug.
Now we will speak a little bit more about an old regulation that seems to be more and more used by the authorities to restrain the access to some substances in food and to reduce their quantity sometimes in food and food supplements. So here I speak about the regulation 9025 of 2006, which was at the beginning only dedicated to enriched food, but for which through the procedure that apply according to the Article 8 of its regulation, we have a possibility for European Commission to restrain and to ban some substances in all the foodstuff, including food supplement. So this can be done through initiative of European Commission or thanks to information that was provided by some member states based on some national assessment, for example, of some substances. So if a substance is considered as not safe based on a certain amount of consumption, then the substance will be forbidden or at least reduced to the safe amount. So through this regulation, European Commission will request in general a safety assessment directly from EFSA. So again, this European Scientific Authority that we have in Europe to do all the assessment of the substance under this procedure of the Article 8. When she will send her final opinion, then EC will decide to classify the substance in the Annex 3 of Regulation 1925 of 2006 in one of these different parts that are detailed here. So it will be, for example, added to the prohibited substances list if it is considered as unsafe, no matter the level, or it will be subject to restrictions if we have obtained from the opinion of EFSA a maximum limit. The last category will be the substances under community control, which will be more for ingredients which should be further monitored before taking the decision. So as I said, it can come from initiative from member states, and it has a major impact on the food supplement sector because it is not only applying to enriched foods. So we had a list for a long time, only including some prohibited substances that were ephedra herb and also yohimbe bark. But in the last couple of years, we also have trans fatty acids that were added to this list, but in the restricted substances. And now, last year, more of them last year, we had some new EFSA assessments on hydroxyanthracene derivatives, green tea catechins, monacolins, and alpha-lipoic acid, which will lead at the end to further European Commission decision. And for now, we already have the text that was published in March 2021 on hydroxyanthracene derivatives. So we are still waiting for the other regulation that will be based also on the conclusion of EFSA opinion. Unfortunately, those opinions were not so good, so positive, and so we had a lot of restriction that we can think to have in the near future for all these ingredients. What is still under discussion concern other botanicals and substances coming from those botanicals. So we should have maybe some new procedure in the future for phenyl and estragol, for example, and also maybe for Garcinia cambogia. But for now, we do not have anything for the substance. We are just waiting for some news on that. So what I wanted to highlight here is at least the new regulation that was published in March 2021 on, of course, all these aloe, emodin, and all this preparation of aloe species that could contain hydroxyanthracene derivatives. So now they are put in the part A of the regulation, of this annex of the regulation, which means that they are considered as prohibited substances. So of course, when you will sell a food supplement in Europe, now you will need to prove that your aloe ingredients do not contain any of these substances that are limited. Also, because those substances can be present in other type of botanicals than aloe, we also have in part C the addition of some preparation of other botanical that are put under community control. That means, for example, if we take the example of France, where you have a notification portal before the marketing of your product, that they will request you to give the information of the quantity of aloe emodin or all these kind of substances present in aloe and in other botanicals. And if you are not able to prove their absence, you could face some interdiction, you will not be in the possibility to sell your product in the different EU member states. So this is for now the first regulation, but we also wait for a specific regulation on monacolin K, which would be also, which will impact the market, because it seems that the maximum limit would be under the quantity that is necessary to be able to claim. So of course it can also impact your market and your communication, because even for substances for which we will not have a full ban of the ingredient, you can have a restriction that will lower the content to an amount that will not permit you to claim on the ingredient. In terms of additives, normally things are well harmonized in the EU, so this is a good thing for the European market, at least for the additives. But unfortunately, we had some issue with one color that was in the past authorized in the whole Europe, which is titanium dioxide. In fact, French authorities decided to forbid this ingredient around 2 years ago, because they considered that it was not safe. And in fact, it was the French authorities who did the assessment on this ingredient and who decided that it was not safe, and who requested to European Commission the right to not to keep it in the positive list of additive for France. So this was a restriction a couple of years ago only for France, but then EFSA came back to its opinion, because at the beginning they considered that this ingredient was safe. But they came back to their assessment using the last data that was sent also by French authorities and all the last reviews they did on this ingredient. And finally, they arrived to a negative opinion too this year. That is why now we are waiting for the amended regulation that should include the ban of the use of this ingredient in all the food categories, including food supplements. So of course it will change a lot the market, because not all the companies were ready to suppress this ingredient because all the companies were not interested in the French market. So some of the companies were waiting for a final decision at the EU side. And now we know that it will be a negative conclusion. So we will have a transitional period of 6 months for the withdrawal of the food products, which include this titanium dioxide, when the final regulation will be published. So normally it should be around July 2022. Of course, it will depend on the date, the exact date of publication of this regulation. Normally, we should have a period to sell to continue selling the stocks. So for the exhaustion of your stocks until the end of their date of minimum durability. But still, you will need to work on some new developments for those products. So in Europe, I think now people are more alert with that, so they found some alternatives, of course, but still it's important if you didn't think about it to maybe begin the work, because it can be quite long to change this kind of formulation. So how to anticipate new restrictions in Europe finally? You have a lot of sources of information to know what will be the next questioning from EFSA authorities or European Commission. To know more about it, you should go through the rapid alert system for food and feed, for example, to see what were the main alerts that came from the consumption of some ingredients. It is the way we saw some new restriction on curcuma, for example, last year, because we had some alerts coming from Italy with some maximum limits that were exceeded, and that led to some safety issues. We can also go through other notification portals to see if we have new requirements in terms of substances to monitor, for example, or additional warning. We can also follow up all the vigilance cases that are submitted to authorities to see on which ingredient it was done, and all the scientific opinions that can come from EFSA, of course, but also from the national authorities, and that could lead to a new assessment under the Article 8 of the Regulation 1925 that I spoke about earlier. Of course, we need also to take into account other opinions coming from drug agencies, because if, for example, some ingredients are considered as not safe for drug application, it could be considered as also not safe for the food supplement category. This we can think about it if we think about phenol and estragol, for which we have already some restrictions for children, for example, for the drug application. So just to go through other hot topics that we face in EU and UK in the moment. So if we think about quality and safety, we wanted to highlight two main news, even if we have a lot to say, and I think it is quite hard to detail everything in 15 minutes, but at least to speak with you about the contaminants. So we have these issues that now we will have a new maximum limit for the pyrrolizidinic alkaloids by July 2022. So for food supplement application, the limit will be 400 microgram per kilogram. And when it will be based on pollen, it will be a little bit upper with a limit at 500 microgram per kilogram. So this has to be known also for you to begin maybe the research on this contaminant during the process, during the development. Of course, at least follow up at the level of the raw material when you use some botanicals in your ingredients, in your food supplement. Then we are also a lot working with our companies, with our clients to help them with the issue we face with ethylene oxide, because this is one pesticide that is banned in Europe since 2011, and we didn't have so much issue with that some years ago. But end of last year, finally, they saw doing some research on spices that some products were contaminated with this pesticide. So it was at the beginning just on some spicy, and then after some research and after some other control that were done in Europe, so in all the member states, we saw that finally lots and lots of ingredients were contaminated. Also, more recently, we saw that HPMC capsules were also contaminating when they were coming from some countries in Asia. And so it led to some ban of the capsule and of the food supplement in EU. And it led also to a risk assessment that was and some additional monitorings that were requested by national authorities. So in terms of risk assessment, now national authorities require to identify all the raw materials that could be subject to contamination. So this is something additional that you need to do when you do your development. So to try to find all the raw materials that could be contaminated with this ethylene oxide. And if you see that some of the products are contaminated, you should recall them from the market. And you should, of course, put in place some corrective action plan to provide to the authorities when you will be controlled. So it can be a change of raw material or change of supplier, some additional controls that you will do at reception, and control, of course, at least of your finished product. So because it is, we are all in a hurry and it is quite hard to have all the information on all the raw materials, we advise at least to control your finished product to show that you are under the detectable amount for your finished product. And so to prove in case of control that the safety of the consumer is not engaged. So this is the first thing that you can do. And of course, to ask to all your suppliers if they did all the control on their ingredients, and to reduce the control at reception if you are not fully sure that the ingredient is totally accepted and compliant with EU regulation. So of course we help with this action plan, and it will really depend, it will be really reviewed on a case-by-case basis based on all the research you will have done on your ingredients and on your finished product. But you need to know that with the current control, they ask for our control plan for this HO contamination. So just in terms of European context more generally, we know that we have more and more restrictions for substances, and sometimes we have quite issues because we do not have any official method. So we need to develop our internal method. So just to help you, of course, you can use, when there are some official data, ISO norms or European pharmacopoeia, of course. Also, Belgian authorities develop their own method that are listed as recognized. So you can also go through those ones to help you to find the right method to follow to search for your substances that are restricted now. If you do not have any information through those lists, we highly recommend you to go through laboratories that are accredited in Europe to search for internal methods that could be recognized in case of control. And then just last quick update on the claim regulation. So we didn't have too much to say, fortunately, on the claim regulation. It has been published more than 15 years now ago. So we just wanted to highlight the fact that we have more and more control based on the substantiation that you can provide for the pending claims that you use on your botanicals. So just to remind you, we have positive list of claims. So this is quite easy. You just need to follow up the conditions of use and you will be able to use it in Europe. But you still have the possibility to use what we call the pending claims that are more based on botanicals. And for these specific claims, of course, you should be the one justifying its efficacy at the dosage that is present in your product. And this position has been confirmed by the recent case law on claims. So that is why we just want to highlight that, because in case of control, again, they will require your scientific dossier and you will need to prove that your dosage permit to have this claim and permit to continue to communicate on all your communication media. If you are not able to justify that, you could face some sanctions. And also, if you use any therapeutical claim, you will be sanctioned for that. So this is why it is really important just to be sure that you are really using the right wording and the right claims based on what you are able to substantiate.
Great. So lastly, I'm just going to quickly summarize some hot topics in the United Kingdom. So I think the big one is Brexit has finally happened. So the United Kingdom is now considered a third country, and so EU laws and regulations no longer apply. That being said, food supplements have retained the European regulations under the Nutrition Amendment Regulations 2019. The main changes are that labeling now needs to include a UK food business operator name and address. New health claims are now going to be assessed by the Food Standards Agency in the UK rather than the European Food Safety Authority. Regulated food products, so novel foods or any sort of medical foods, will now require a dual submission in both the UK and the EU. And mutual recognition no longer applies. So you won't be able to leverage an opinion of one member country in the United Kingdom. So just a few little considerations at the bottom for food businesses looking to enter the UK, or if they already have a business in Europe. So there's a need to set up a new legal entity in the UK so they can use the address. Most companies tend to partner with an importer or distributor in the UK or with a third party, and we work a lot with this as well. Updating the labeling, and there's a hard stop on the 30th of September 2022. So by this date, all the labels should be compliant under the new regulation. We've had some manufacturers ask us, is this date just for us to stop producing products, or is this the absolute hard date? But our opinion on it is that from now until then, products with old labeling should filter through the supply chain, and the 30th of September is when all products should be completely out of the market. If you've got an application with EFSA in Europe already for a regulated product, so like a novel food, there is a need to do a new application in the UK as well. This is done on a case-by-case basis, depending on how far the review has gone through in Europe. And lastly, European law still is applicable in Northern Ireland, but that's subject of another whole discussion, so I won't get into that. And finally, just some topics of interest that might be of interest to you guys. First thing, the use of the probiotic term. As you probably know, you're unable to use the term probiotic throughout Europe. And the regulators have never really looked at this favorably. Now that the UK is completely separate, we might see some changes. And in fact, very recently, a working group was established with a lot of industry bodies. And they basically put together a position paper that made the argument for the use of probiotics. So nothing's been published yet, but I do urge you to pay attention because from what I've heard, it is being looked at very favorably. So we might see some changes here in the future. Second thing is plastic taxes. So a very, very broad topic, but where it affects food businesses is that, so the UK is imposing taxes on businesses that aren't using recyclable packaging. Food supplements tend to use a lot of packaging made from plastics, and we urge food businesses to review the packaging. And there might be cases where they need to conduct stability studies or things like that to make sure that they can use new recyclable packaging. And lastly, allergen labeling. The UK is introducing a new law on bolding allergens for pre-packed foods. So those are just a few hot topics which I thought I'd throw in at the end, which might be of interest. And finally, I think we were out of time, but I just wanted to point out that RNI regularly hosts webinars. These are free and anyone can join them. We usually ask questions before the webinar, about a week or two beforehand, and we welcome everyone to ask us questions, and we will design the webinar around the questions that we get asked. So we've got one next week about exporting dietary supplements, and the link is down there, so we do urge you all to join. And that's everything from us. Thank you.
Well, thank you. This is Jim Wing. Thank you so much. I know that the time none of us were really watching the clock because it was really an impressive presentation, and I think did address many of what I have been hearing from CRN members on dealing with Europe and even dealing with the UK. I mean, that has been kind of a sidebar that nobody even really asks, post-Brexit, what do we do and how do we do it? So once again, I applaud all three of you for giving a really excellent presentation. And you did indeed touch on many of the underlying issues that we have heard from our members. So once again, kudos all the way around. I am going to open it up now for questions, and I have one that maybe I can start with. Well, actually, I have two. One is on the methods. You talked earlier about the methods that need to be developed, and you talked about European Pharmacopoeia, Belgium, etc. I was wondering, is there also recognition for AOAC and the United States Pharmacopoeia? I mean, obviously, both of those organizations are really in the weeds and lots of analytical method development, round robin, kinds of analyses on making sure methods are reproducible, et cetera. And so, if a company has been able to use a USP method or an AOAC method, I think there's even the Association of Cereal Chemists or Association of Oil Chemists, et cetera, have also developed very specific methods for matrices, specific to those other associations. Can you use those if you are trying to demonstrate, that you are meeting these, very tight European imposed limits, or will there be the mandate that it needs to be via these, more Eurocentric organizations and methods?
I think it will depend on the case. Of course, if there is an official method that is requested when you have a new restriction, they will ask us to go through this method, or at least to prepare a rationale to prove that you can compare your own method with the official one. So it will maybe need a special argue if you have an official method that is recognized in EU and you do not follow it. If there is no official method in Europe, of course, all the other methods will be looked at very deeply. Sometimes it is even hard for the inspectors, for the authorities to develop their own method, and sometimes they are quite late. They can publish some regulation and not would be ready with a method that would apply with this regulation. It was the case, for example, in France when they developed their botanical arrêté with lots of substances to monitor. They asked all the companies to monitor the substance, but they were not ready to suggest some method. And so, of course, they were ready to hear from companies who justified the monitoring of the substance through US Pharmacopoeia or other international method, of course. We have faced recently, for example, an issue with Belgium authorities because they suggest some methods. So we wanted to use other methods that were more recognized by the labs, because they considered it was on alkaloids, and they considered that it was better to use another method that was a little bit more strict than for this case. For example, it was spectrophotometry, and so they considered that they had a method that was stricter and that was more adapted. And finally, they stayed with their position to say, okay, but because we want the total alkaloids, we want to stay with our spectrometry method. And it is true that sometimes the discussions are not so easy because they prefer their own list than the ones that we want to suggest. So in this case, we need to do some discussion with authorities. And again, the rationals are very important to be sure that we have an intelligent discussion with the authorities. Yeah.
I'm going to jump in real quick with one other question I got via email from one of our members who was unable to attend. I do see we have a couple in the chat, so I guess I'm asking for a fairly short answer, and you may even have to, we may have to put you in touch with this particular CRN member. Yes. But their question was, is there any detailed regulation or proposal to require the upper limits of heavy metals in the finished products for dietary supplements in Europe? And once again, he did point out to some of the EU legislation on contaminants in food, but he felt, or he's heard rumors that there's a lot more going on in Europe when it comes to heavy metal limits. Is there a short answer regarding what might be required for those upper levels of heavy metals? Just a quick answer. Otherwise, we can maybe do that offline with that specific question.
Yes. We can maybe have a look. In any case, there are already some maximum limits, and it is true that we had also some EFSA opinion recently. So if he has a request on a specific contaminant, yes, we can have a look what are the last news on it. In any case, we already have a maximum limit set at the EU level for mercury, lead, and cadmium, and at the national level for arsenic. But I don't know on which heavy metals I would like to have more data. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I just said I would ask the question, and I will relay that as a possibility going forward. I do see a couple of questions in the chat, so hopefully not embarrassing anybody with a quick call out. But Elaine, do you want to go ahead and voice your question?
Sorry, my screen just went dead there. Mine was in relation to the mutual recognition process. So I just wanted to ask the question: is there a list of countries in the EU that basically, that accept mutual recognition approvals of other countries?
Not really.
Okay.
No, not really. Even countries that recognize mutual recognition can, because of safety issue, not accept mutual recognition for one specific botanical or substance. So I would say, in any case, it is still a case by case, even for the countries that recognize mutual recognition.
Okay.
We have a new harmonized regulation for mutual recognition, and it works well for normal food stuff. But for food supplements, it's not so easy because some countries have exhaustive lists. They do not accept any other list. Some other can accept things but have specific substances that are forbidden. So it doesn't work so well, finally, even with the new regulation.
Okay,
thank you so much. And Dashani, I know you have a question that's pending as well in the chat section.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. And my question relates to the claims process or an environment for botanicals in the EU. Would that be similar to the same process one would leverage, say, for a Article 13.5 health claim? Would those types of nomenclatures and processes also apply to botanicals, or is it a different claims structure?
Oh. Yes, normally it would be in the context of the 13.5, but for botanicals, in fact, we have an issue. The authorities do not all agree on the fact to use only clinical study as a proof, as a substantiation of your claim. So waiting for a consensus at the EU level, we can use sometimes in some countries traditional data, so data on tradition of use of the botanicals. So for example, the data that you can find in monographs. And because we do not have this consensus, it is also why people do not request a lot for new authorization, because it is hard to be sure what will be the level of substantiation that will be requested. So if you want to develop your own new authorization for your botanical and you have done clinical study, I would say, yes, you can go through it. But if you want to obtain a new authorization based on traditional data, then it would be better to wait because there is no consensus on that.
Thank you. And what about in the UK? How are claims being evaluated in the UK, again, specific to botanicals?
So the UK is basically following the exact same process as Europe for now. Part of the whole Brexit process was to make the transition as easy as possible. So for now, you have to go through the same process. The only difference is that it's being evaluated by a UK-specific working group rather than all the different European countries. But the guidance documents are applicable to the UK. And in terms of approved and pending botanical claims, those have been copied over from Europe into the UK. So you are still free to use those.
Thank you for the clarification.
Christy, I see you have a question as well. Do you want to go ahead and throw that out there?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So yeah, my question was on the ethylene oxide, since this is kind of a new thing. Is there a list of ingredients that need to be confirmed and checked? Is there one established, or is this something that we need to kind of get certification from each supplier of every raw material?
We could give you like a first list of for which raw materials we found some contamination, but it is increasing a lot. So at the beginning, as I said, it was seeds, the spices, some seeds, etc. Now you see that you have also some HPMC capsules that are contaminated. You have other ingredients. So finally, it is really beginning more and more important. And also about the zones, at the beginning, it was more ingredients that were coming from Asia, but it seems to be contaminated also some other ingredients coming from other countries. So the list is, yes, there are some lists already, but it is increasing. So I think in terms of method, if you need to begin to control your raw materials, maybe you could begin with the spices, etc. But still, you should at least maybe look at the final product and see that you do not have any detectable amount of this pesticide in your final product, just to see if you need to conduct additional study on all your raw materials. You know, it will be easier this way. Yeah.
Is it going to be part of registration that the absence of this is to be proved and shown?
In Europe, food supplements are not really registered, they are notified. So you know the level of data that we provide when we do the notification is not so high. We do not deliver anything on the process, for example, or on the HACCP principle. So no, I don't think they will ask for et al. Data. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
It is more in case of control then, just to say that in case of control, they ask for those data. When they come to your company and they visit the importer or the distributors, it is when they will ask for those data more than the notification.
The due diligence to be able to show proof.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't see anything else popping up in the chat function. We still have.
Jim, sorry, I do have one question. It's regarding the plastic taxes that you mentioned earlier, Cavell. Is that something that you're seeing across different countries, or is it something that is it growing, and like what would that be based on? Any further clarification on that?
So if I understood your question correctly, I'm pretty sure the same thing's happening in other countries. I do know the UK has made it very public for the last couple of years, so it's probably got a bit more coverage. But we are seeing the industry move towards recyclable plastics. And I mean, apart from food supplements, a lot of the other industries we're helping with, like medical devices, we're seeing a lot of manufacturers having to reconduct testing to check compatibility with new plastics as well. So I think that's the reason why the UK made it very well known very early on to get people ready for this change.
Right. And is it sorry, I was going to say, is it a tiered tax as far as, let's say, primary components or secondary components?
The tax is based on the percentage of recyclable plastic. I think it's 90-something%, but don't quote me on that one. But it's based on the percentage that's in your product.
Okay, thank you very much.
And yes, about Europe, we have lots of actions with all the member states. Also, also on the claims that you put on your product, on the possibility to recycle your product, etc. So we have more and more national rules, and lots of our customers are quite disappointed because it is not harmonized. So it means that maybe we'll have to add some data, some additional mentions that will be different depending on the member states. So it will not help also the selling of your product in all the EU markets. So we are also following these new mentions, these new rules at the European level. So if you have any question about this, all the the ways that you will recycle your product or not, it will be now specified in your communication. So yes, this is also changing in Europe.
Okay, thank you.
Last call for any questions. We still have just a very few minutes, but I don't want to close it off. If one of our members has a burning question. I think there's been a fascinating presentation. I think the slide deck and the the recording, the audio recording would be a great resource for CRN's International Trade and Market Development Committee. Once again, I would encourage any of you to take a look at at this particular resource going forward. I think there's a lot you can go back and mine from it. And I think as I get ready to close and hand it over to Deshani, I do want to point out that RNI webinar, I guess it's about a week from now. I think it's going to be something that is extremely valuable to our members. So I would encourage everyone to either consider joining this particular webinar or pass this along to your colleagues in your organizations that might find some relevance in that. So without further, I'm going to pass it back to Deshani. I mean, not Deshani, Garnet.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
We agreed Garnet was going to do the
I apologize. Yeah, Garnet, I'm sorry.
No problem. So thank you, everyone, and to our guests from RNI, Leah, Kaval, and Anna Claire. We appreciate you presenting to our members and sharing all that great knowledge, and hope everyone had some great takeaways that will benefit their companies themselves and their consumers. So thank you all for attending this call, and have a great day.